Hello and welcome to Inside Edition, where we discuss national, regional and international issues in depth. Following the royal directives of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa to preserve the authentic Bahraini identity, the Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Sheikh Rashid bin Abdullah Al Khalifa, announced the launch of the national plan to promote the spirit of belonging to the nation and reinforce the values of citizenship, Bahrainuna, in March 2019. Since that time, Bahrainuna has been featuring more than 100 initiatives implemented in collaboration with 25 ministries and organizations through 5 main tracks centered on belonging programs, public relations campaigns, as well as media initiatives. To talk more about that, we are pleased to be joined by the Director of the Executive Office of the National Plan to promote the spirit of belonging to the nation and reinforce the values of citizenship, Bahrainuna, Ms. Hala Sleiman. Welcome back. Joining me here in the studio is the Director of the Executive Office of the National Plan to promote the spirit of belonging to the nation and reinforce the values of citizenship, Bahrainuna, Ms. Hala Sleiman. Thank you very much for being with us today. Ms. Hala, first up, when we listen or when we hear Bahrainuna, we know that it has to do with the entity of Bahrain, with being a part of Bahrain. But the specifics, the establishment and what the goals are, we don't. Can you explain that to us, please?
Bahrainuna, of course, is an Arabic word which means our Bahrain. It also stands for our national anthem, which is called Bahrainuna. And it's a national plan to enhance and to ensure the spirit of belonging to the nation, and also to instill national values. It's a national plan that is a translation and interpretation of His Majesty the King's vision with relevance to national unity and the importance of belonging and national values.
Yes. In my intro, I mentioned that the actual plan to promote the spirit of belonging to the nation and reinforce the values of citizenship was actually launched in 2019. And there's so much support from the leadership and from the government to this program specifically. How do you value this royal and government support to all the efforts that aim to preserving the genuine Bahraini identity and values of citizenship?
Bahrainuna as a national plan, as you mentioned, was launched in March 2019. However, the work on it started earlier, around January 2018, where it became an interpretation by His Excellency the Minister of Interior to His Majesty the King's vision and directives. And a whole team was put together involving representatives from the academic field, from the media, from the different ministries, different segments and sectors of the community, where they discussed how do you really instill and enhance national belonging and national values. What are the Kingdom of Bahrain's national values? And there are personal values at a personal level, and also values and characteristics of a country. So a lot of effort has been put to put this national plan together, which is based on 5 pillars. The 5 pillars include 107 initiatives, and these pillars include belonging initiatives, public relations and media initiatives, curricular-based initiatives, and legislative initiatives. So all of these 5 pillars, under them come a number of initiatives that are developed and actioned by different stakeholders.
All right. What can you tell us about the suggested and implemented initiatives of Bahrainuna?
Up to date, the total number of initiatives are 107 initiatives, and about 85% of these initiatives have been actioned. And when I say they've been actioned, is because we've segmented them into 3 different areas. That is it developed? Okay. Has it been actually been implemented? Is it ongoing, or is it under development?
Right.
So all of them are being worked on, but because the initiatives vary from 6 months to 4 years, so some are still in the planning phase, and some are ongoing or are actual annual initiatives.
Right. During our, we're talking about Bahrain and looking at who would be the best people to make use of the Bahrain programs and implementations. We really see that mostly it would be the children, the youth of Bahrain, who would considerably take a lot of benefits from the programs itself. So how important is it to consider the youth of Bahrain as the target audience, if not the most vital one of them?
I think it's important to emphasize that Bahrain's initiatives were developed by Bahrainis for Bahrainis. And also when a kingdom by its citizens continues to have that sense of security and stability from a social perspective, it also engulfs the residents and also the visitors to the country. And this is something that, starting from the top, His Majesty the King, to every single individual that represents the government, that's having a sense of security, stability, social security is very important. Our population in the Kingdom of Bahrain is a young population. Demographically speaking, we represent, the Bahraini youth represent 54% of the population. And under that comes the segment of young students, whether in schools or in universities. And also young working professionals. And the focus is on the youth because they are the future of the country, and also they are the current and present pillars of developing the country. The programs revolve around them. The outcome of the plan as a plan is focusing on making sure that the youth have that sense of national belonging, sense of this is my country, I need to serve it, I need to contribute to my country because it impacts me as an individual, as a Bahraini, impacts my family, my community, and sort of the bigger picture, the Kingdom of Bahrain. So youth were targeted from day one, from the stages of research and until the current stage where we're entering our actually second 3-year phase of implementation.
Right. In order to perform or to actually implement these initiatives, you need to have partners, and these partners are within the private and the public sectors, especially when it comes to youth and having certain ministries as part of the program. So tell us a bit about where are these programs implemented and the cooperations between Bahrainuna and the various public and private institutions.
I think from a governance perspective, it's important to clarify that the national plan, which was launched by His Excellency the Minister of Interior, he's also the minister responsible for following up on the implementation and execution of the national plan.
Right.
With that ministerial committee is a number of ministers and ministries, which includes the Ministry of Education, because they have the biggest number of youth, the Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Labor and Social Development, the Ministry of Justice and Islamic Affairs, the Ministry of Health. So they're all ministries that are pretty much responsible for the youth and citizens' interests. Under that comes the Executive Committee, which sort of follows up on a regular day-to-day basis, and the Executive Office. But it's not, if we were to say, are we the ones who are doing the work? It's actually the result of what we call community partnership. We have 27 ministries contributing to the success of the national plan. They are ministries, semi-government agencies, and also these ministries have that sort of viral or domino effect because they have to work with other partners to make these initiatives successful. So we do have a huge number of organizations and partners working on them, but from an accountability perspective, from a documentation perspective, it's in the range of 27 entities.
Right, so that's a huge number by itself. When we look at these initiatives and having them implemented, the world is ever changing. I mean, we've all felt that with the pandemic that hit and how everything got expedited or digitalized or everything changed in a minute. So even programs like this and initiatives like that have to be changed from time to time. How do you reassess these initiatives, and how do you change them to basically fit more into the times or in what's needed in these days?
I think the pandemic is a blessing, and I think it's an opportunity for us to evolve and continue to challenge ourselves.
Yeah.
So the first 3 years of the national plan, there were actually 107 initiatives, and the focus was to implement them. And we've managed to implement about 85% of these initiatives. The others are work in progress. But the pandemic and post-pandemic era has actually helped us in what do we really need to focus on. So we thought of what is called the digital citizen. We thought of the youth in the new era. So if we look at our own households, everybody has a mobile in their hand or working on some kind of a digital platform.
Right.
So a number of the initiatives have been taken forward and further enhanced and developed. So they actually are accessible via digital platforms. Hence, we will ensure let's call it a full reach out to the target audience. But not only a reach out, I can also assess and measure through sort of a digital audit or through the number of clicks or through the engagement that yes, people, participated in the specific initiative. So this is one route that was taken, and we have a number of online platforms. The Experts Bahrain platform, which looks at promoting and registering Bahrainis with expertise and knowledge. There is the youth and volunteering program. There's a volunteers program which was developed and initiated during the COVID-19 health pandemic.
Yes.
And that platform in itself is a success story because it showcased and reflected Bahrainis' love to their country.
Yeah.
In less than 7 days, more than 35,000 people registered on the platform. That says it. And I can document it because I know that I have 35,000 people who registered.
Yes.
Not only is it a success by registration, but by the actual speed, by the actual fact that this number registered within less than a week. And what's even more important is data was extracted and these volunteers were taken to play a role during the health pandemic.
Right.
So this is one example of project where you could see it from pre to post, and you can actually assess every phase of it.
Absolutely.
And the second route which we're taking is we've done a number of studies with the Darasat, which is our research center in Bahrain, also with the University of Bahrain, with the Bahrain Institute for Public Administration. And we've done a number of studies, either opinion polls, or at the moment we're working on very interesting research which will take us to developing the national plan further, is identifying certain elements of social behavior. And these elements of social behavior, which part of it needs either enhancing or improving, or there is a gap, and developing social experimentation programs related to it. I'm actually very proud to say that at the moment it's in its pilot phase, but it's also the first, probably in the Arab world, where we're designing such a research project based on social experimentation. So rather than have 107 initiatives, actually be more focused on which gaps do we really need to fill in to enhance national belonging and instill national values. So I would say the digital era and research and social experimentation are the two elements we would be working on over the next couple of years.
That's amazing. Having those facts and figures and suggestions visually in front of you helps you to improve and perfect actually the initiatives already available and come up with new ones as well. Bahrain, as we've talked about, main point is to instill and basically strengthen that belonging to the nation and to reinforce the values of citizenship. And Bahrainis take especially their belonging to the nation during the National Day holiday celebrations very seriously. What can you tell us about Bahrain's support and participation in the national and social celebrations as well as heritage-related activities?
Okay. Again, the Bahrain as a national plan currently functions as an executive office under the Ministry of Interior. And the focus, again, and I feel it's very important to emphasize it, is actually social security. So looking at it, how do I emphasize a feeling? So it's if you instill national values, you're ensuring that there is security and stability in the long term, because I instill the right values, instill the correct behavior, direct, coach, mentor through these kind of initiatives. One important segment of the national plan is making the Bahraini citizen, the new generation, relate to their history, to their heritage, and what the Kingdom of Bahrain represents or represented over the years. So we work closely with the Ministry of Tourism and the Bahrain Tourism and Exhibitions Authority, Bahrain Antiquities and Culture Authority, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Youth. And each of these ministries or organizations have a number of national festivities. So for example, annually the Ministry of Education has Al-Bahrain Awalan, which means Bahrain comes first. And what they do is they try to instill in the students the feeling and sense of belonging and feeling happy that we're celebrating December, we're celebrating our kingdom, we're celebrating our leadership through a number of activities and traditional and heritage-based dances. Recently, with the Ministry of Tourism, we did a number of parades, and one interesting parade which was considered the launch event was done at the Bahrain Fort in Karbabad. So if you look at the elements of the activity, we chose a historical location and actually a UNESCO heritage site. So it really relates to Bahrain's history, relates to Bahrain's identity. We brought in the police parade, which they're not only the music band, but the music band, the camels, the horses, some artillery. So there was a nice display of the different units that come under this, with entertaining national music. And then the best part of it is also the element of being by the beach, which represents Bahrain as well, and the people. So we had people coming in, attending the parades, coming in from the villages surrounding the area. We had done a public announcement, so people came in to attend. And when you look at people using their cameras and engaging and talking and learning, the small children, these kind of activities are sort of subliminal messaging. So you're instilling your love to your country and understanding your heritage and understanding your history through an activation which is music-based or culture-based. I personally, until this day, every time I attend such events, whether it's organized by Bahrainuna or by other entities in the Kingdom of Bahrain, I personally enjoy it. I relate to it. You're brought up with these kind of symbolism. Other activities like the culture festival that used to be organized by the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Heritage. Again, it's a whole tour of different representation of what the heritage is. There is the Heritage Village, which is managed by the Ministry of Information Affairs. And again, what they've done is they've done a nice mix. So the ambience is a typical Bahraini village. With sort of the elements of Bahraini houses, of how they used to historically being built. And they have a number of entrepreneurs. So it's a nice fusion of history and the future. And there's different elements of entertainment, whether folklore dances, songs, showcasing Bahraini food. If I as an individual start understanding my history and where my food came from, where these dances came from, why were the houses designed at such a stage, it keeps me going for the future and keeps me wanting to, this is how my country started and this is where I want to take it further, but without leaving our history and heritage aside. It's the basis of our future. You cannot disconnect. We are a continuation of what our forefathers and grandfathers and the previous generation built over the years. So, and this was actually part of a focus group where the youth themselves were saying, we're not the beginning, we are a continuation of it. So they're actually the ones who echoed such statements.
I mean, I love them having that kind of idea. And one thing that you mentioned, I mean, the Heritage Village by itself, because we are at the ministry and because the ministry has been running it for a while now, every year there are more programs that are added and that really go to the depth and to the core of the values of Bahrain's citizens and Bahrainis, and also of the history. I mean, when you see the different aspect of it, not just the folk or dances, but also the history, how things used to be made, why they have changed with time, what are the influences that have influenced, that by itself brings out a lot of pride. When we talk, you talked also about taking out the camera and filming these kind of things. Each media piece that comes out there is more of like a real gratitude and a sign of pride of being Bahraini, because they are sharing these moments together. And that brings us to my next question: social media. Social media has really facilitated so much communication directly with your target audience, or even in providing this mass awareness or this mass kind of announcements when it comes to the initiatives that are being done, not just by Bahrain, but specifically about Bahrain. How do you make use of these platforms that are available now to communicate with your target audience, or to generally to people, making them aware of the programs?
We're now in the digital era, so it's very important because we're talking to the youth. And we've, as I mentioned earlier, that we're working on developing a number of initiatives so that there is a clear reach out, but not just reach out, and it's something that we can assess. A number of initiatives that were designed were actually comes under events and activities. So, for example, I think just prior to the health pandemic, we had a digital photography called Bahrain in Our Eyes. And basically more than 400 or 500 participants, Bahrainis, residents, and even visitors to Bahrain, participated in the competition. And it was interesting to see the engagement, because they were taking photos, and one of the criteria and conditions was to upload it on social media. And of course, we went through the whole works of having competition. But what's most important is, until this day, all of these participants continue to send us photos of Bahrain. So the engagement continued, the activation continued, and I think that's sort of the impact that you want to create. So if I come and say numbers, I'd say 500 participated, 800 photos were registered, but I think that these are just numbers. The impact is, until 2 years post this event, I still have people contributing with photos to our social media channels, because we're also on social media. If we talk from an initiatives perspective, in the coming phase, we've transformed a number of initiatives so that they're actually digital based, and they are either website platforms that can be accessed also via different technology-based tools. So one of the examples we had mentioned earlier is the Watani magazine. It used to be a traditional magazine 10 years ago, designed based on cartoons. It was developed by the Ministry of Interior as one of the stakeholders of Bahrain. They developed it during the pandemic and converted it into a PDF publication and into an app-based publication, but also on PDF. Fine, it served the short-term purpose, but at the moment we're working with a whole number of stakeholders, so Bahrain Executive Office, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Youth, and a number of other stakeholders, to transform it into a full-fledged digital platform targeting children starting from the age of grade 1 and until university. But not only is it based on animation and 2D and 3D models, not only is it based on videos, it's been designed so students can engage, they are assessed, parents can supervise, teachers and schools can supervise, and at the end of each assessment you get a badge which represents one of the 18 national values, and if you've finalized all the 18 stages, you get a golden award, sort of the golden Bahraini badge. So there's an element of education, engagement, interaction, reward, and that feeling of achievement. And so you start embedding these sort of feelings
Right.
You know, because they're not tangible.
Yeah.
But you know, when you add all of these elements together and then you assess it in the end, you can actually measure them through KPIs or numbers, and at the same time see the change happen.
Yeah. Actually, that would have been my next questions. I mean, you told us how you assess your success, but how do you value this constant success of Bahrainuna, and what are these achievements in facts and figures?
Okay. When people always ask me the question about, you know, is your program successful? I think the word success has different interpretations for it. I don't like calling it successful if I'm going to talk about numbers. I can say that I've achieved 85% of the initiatives. 15% are work in progress, but then that's a number. Did we create the change? Have we really created an impact? Were we able to change social behavior? And I think that's very difficult to assess at the moment, because if I speak on a corporate culture level, it takes 7 years to create change. So imagine on a national level. And we're not trying to change as such. We're trying to look at which areas to enhance, or which gaps that need to be filled, which serve the objectives of emphasizing belonging and instilling national values. So, you know, I'm being very careful with the words, because it's important, because immediately the first, you know, the first sort of reaction would be, you know, why are you judging my love to my country? You know, or why do you think that, you know, I do not, or why do you assume that I don't have national values? But it's not the case. We're just trying to, through this national plan, through the collaborative work of a big number of government and NGOs and citizens, to put together a national plan that will help creating the sense of belonging and instill the values. We're trying to make sure that they're measured through opinion polls, through a number of audits, and also I mentioned earlier that we're working on a very interesting study and research, which is in cooperation with the Bahrain Institute for Public Administration, University of Bahrain, and also Dirasat played a role, our strategic research center. And it's one of the first studies as such, where we're looking at specific social behaviors and researching them. And we're looking at very specific, like the most sort of observed, let's say, social behaviors, let's say in the work area and on the day-to-day life, research them, find out what are the requirements which need to be enhanced or gaps filled, and then develop a number of projects to create social experimentation. So we are implementing initiatives, but in parallel, we're doing a number of research studies and social experimentation to make sure that the national plan is actually doing what it needs to be doing, and it's delivering its objectives. And it's not an easy project, not because of difficulty. You're measuring, you know, people's feelings. You're measuring sentiments. You're measuring, if I can say it, if it's a correct term, people's love to their country. But we're trying to make sure that they relate to tangible. So we're measuring non-tangible elements.
You're measuring the qualitative, not the quantitative.
Exactly, through tangible initiatives.
Yes. Well, I mean, before we go to our last question for today, hearing you talk about all of these initiatives and everything that has performed, these are really the facts and figures by themselves. I mean, how many initiatives are out there, how many of them have been successful, how some of them are still ongoing, although the initiatives have ended, such as the program. So these by themselves are really a huge measure of success. And we want to see what's coming up next. So what can you tell us about Bahrainuna's upcoming projects and events?
I think what's interesting is every single participant in the national plan has played an amazing role, starting from the leadership's patronage and vision to the youngest employee or intern working on with us in the executive office. And what we've been working together on doing is working in collaboration and working in reality as what we call Team Bahrain. We work collectively in collaboration to make sure how we can put our efforts together, put our resources together, deliver the objectives, and at the same time deliver them with a lot of economic and financial viability. So let's say a good example, the National Day festivities. The efforts of 3 or 4 ministries came together under the umbrella of Ayad al-Watan, which is the nation's national festivities. And every single entity contributed to it. So you can see us rushing to work together, and that in itself is an element of success. So further collaboration over the next few years, further focus on the digital platforms so that we have a bigger reach out and easier to assess. And also more studies and more focused initiatives. And we also, the Bahraini office is open to ideas. So we do have a website, which is www.bahrainina.com. We do have an email, which is info@bahrainina.com. And these emails and websites is open and accessible for any even suggestions from the community. We are open to feedback. It's a dynamic national plan. So we're extremely open for expertise or for contributions from the citizens, which we have also worked with them and developed a number of initiatives. The private sector has played an amazing role. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names, but I think it's only fair. So one good example is companies like Alba, Betelco, Viva, Gulf Finance House, the properties division, Zain, and much more have either worked with us and given us support in kind or worked with us strategically. So Gulf Finance House this year and the last 2 years have had a nice national flags field, about 1,500. Again, it was a photo opportunity, but just going through the flags and seeing, your national flag waving, people running and taking photos with it, families taking initiative and dressing their children in national dress to take photos with it. So if you look at it, it's probably a very simple activation, but again, it's the impact it creates.
Yes, of course.
So all of this cooperation with these organizations have also made us more and more successful.
It's amazing, and we really look forward to all of the other programs and upcoming events that you have or are planning. Thank you very much for being with us and for answering our questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'd also like to thank you, dear viewers, for watching us, and we'll see you next week in another episode of Inside Edition.